Welcome to another Truetone Lounge quarantine edition, and this is one that I've, Duke has been on my short list of cats to interview. Been a favorite for a long time, from his work with Mary Chapin Carpenter and Jonatha Brooke to Peter Wolf and soundtrack work with John Sayles, like on Lone Star and other movies, and of course. Probably the biggest thing is his solo records. He's one of the few guitarists who makes great solo albums that are listenable over and over again. I've owned Duke's records since the early '90s, and I still listen to them regularly. And they're melodic and soulful and toneful, and so it's a treat to finally kind of sit down, even if it's via Skype, to get to talk to Duke. So thank you so much for doing this, Duke.
Thanks for having me, Zach. Likewise.
All
Pleasure
right.
to be.
Well, cool. Well, I always assumed that your nickname came from your guitar playing, but I found out that it actually was a nickname that your dad gave you.
Yeah, my dad gave me this. I really didn't like it. He used to tell stories when we'd go on vacation in the summers, and we'd sit around after dinner, and he would tell stories that would involve basically everybody in the room would become a character.
Mm-hmm.
Some seemed to be based around Captain Hook for some reason, which I don't know if any of us still know why. But I was the Duke in that, and this was probably, I was like 8 or 9, 10 years old, and that it started sticking. Some of my family would call me that, and friends started calling me that, and I really didn't like it. I think I acquiesced around the time I graduated high school, because no one knew who I was if I used my real name. So
because your name's Robert.
Yeah, Bob.
Bob Levine.
And a couple of my family members still call me that. But mostly I just turned around and got used to it.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's a great, guitar player name.
People seem to, and my dad. I joke because my dad always used to say I should have a gimmick. He knows, and this is my gimmick, I guess. That he gave me my gimmick.
Well, it's a good gift. What else did you learn from your dad that was important?
Man, he was the greatest. He supported. We had 5 kids, and whatever any of us did, he and my mom supported us wholeheartedly. They were huge fans too. So even from early on, I started playing with bands when I was around 12, and he would drive us to gigs, do the whole trip that a lot of cool parents did, and help the band however he could. He sold printing. So he would print our posters and our bumper stickers, and just so, and also I'd run into people around town, our hometown, that knew him, because he was just he either they worked with him or somehow they met him, and everyone had kind words to say about my dad, and I thought that was pretty cool.
That's very cool. You kind of have musical siblings too. Of course, your brother Buzzy has Lark Street, which is a great vintage shop. Just kind of a quick sidetrack. How did Buzzy get into the vintage guitar business? I mean, he was one of the earlier guys in that.
Yeah, he was. I think early on he studied, I think, violin repair a little bit and guitar repair. And I remember he was, when I used to go visit him when I was like 10 years old. He was living in Amherst, which is Western Massachusetts, and he was working in a guitar shop then. I remember one of my earliest memories was hanging out in this place called Fretted Instrument Workshop, which it's not still there. It was there for quite a long time, and he got into it that way, like repairs and stuff. And then I just think he just loved guitars, and I think he opened his shop in Albany in the 80s. I'm pretty sure, yeah, probably the early 80s, I guess.
Yeah, so he's been in it a long time, still going strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So what leads you to pick up the guitar?
So yeah, like, well, I'm the youngest of five, and
Yeah.
my brother Rick, Elliot, all played. So there was a guitar in the house, and my sister and I are closer in age, so we kind of picked it up around the same time. And our dad bought us two Yamaha FG75 acoustic.
Yeah.
And already my brother Rick had a nice J50 hanging around the house, and I remember playing. Buzz was the oldest, so he was kind of out of the house when I was pretty young. But I remember him having a couple cool electric guitars. But my brother Rick used to like to play in open tuning. That was kind of a thing, that folky thing back then. This would have been like late 60s, early 70s. And I remember, I thought I could play guitar because I picked it up and it was an open G. And I was playing, I was like, I'm pretty good without doing anything.
Yeah, I'm pretty good.
Yeah, I could do this. And so he my couple brothers got us started and showed us chords and stuff. And they had, great record collection too. So I got, really between getting turned on to, actually being able to play the guitar and all the cool records that we had right there in the house that I might not have had otherwise.
Yeah.
And my sister doesn't play a lot anymore, but, she played in earnest for a little while. She had a punk band in the late 70s, and I played with her a little bit in her own band. So she had a little bit of a career too. And yeah, pretty much my other brothers still play.
And so then you had like high school bands and things like that, and then you continued to study music at the university level.
Yeah. I was in a band all through junior high and high school, and by the end, actually, we had a manager who bought us a bus, and we had our own sound and lights. And I would always think I learned a lot without even knowing it, because we were playing gigs on the weekends all through high school.
Right.
I got through high school. I joined a band full time right out of high school for about 4 years. Played in a full time band called Crockett, and mostly regional around New England. And then after that stopped, then I thought about going to music school. I was studying with a great teacher in my hometown of Worcester, a guy named Rich Falco, who's a great jazz player and teacher. And when I told him I was thinking about going to music school, he thought I should go to New England Conservatory because Mick Goodrick was teaching there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big.
And that's who you took with. Yeah.
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 That's what I said.
So, how your first solo record was called Guitar Talk, and it was more of a fusiony thing, and that's pretty hard to find album. But then but then you move on to like Nobody's Home and Country Soul Guitar, and so I'm wondering, how does a guy up in the Northeast get into Telecasters and the country soul music and how did that transpire? Because of course that first solo record was, and I think you played with the Del Fuegos and you did some other things during this period of time. So how did you move toward this kind of Americana country soul kind of music?
Well, it's funny the first record too. I just found some of those, the Guitar Talks. So I probably get that out in the world somewhere at some point. I had a country band that I guess around the time I was going to New England, studying jazz at the conservatory, I had a band with some friends of mine we were playing mostly honky tonk, old country music, and I just got into it more right around that time. This was like in the '80s, and there was also that whole kind of what did they call it then? They call it Americana now, but that like my friend was in the Blood Oranges and the Del Fuegos and Los Lobos. There was kind of a roots resurgence around then.
Right.
But I had loved the like Merle Haggard records when I was a kid and learned a little bit of that then. But yeah, around that time I was going to the conservatory. I also got into playing more country guitar and that music, and so yeah, while I was in school, my first record I did was like more of a jazz fusion thing. And it's funny because even by the time that record came out, because how these things go, it takes a little while. You're doing it on your own somewhat. By the time it came out, I was already kind of shifted. I was out of school and I kind of shifted my focus to like, well, I like instrumental music, but how can I make it more rootsy? Like maybe incorporate country guitar playing into it, which is really what I love to do. I was never an in earnest jazz player. And so I kind of shifted already at that point, and was playing some of the stuff that became Nobody's Home. But I just love the music. And I was listening, like, at that point, Albert Lee and Ray Flack were kind of my then in that era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how were you, were you just picking up all this stuff on your own? Was there anyone to actually learn from in your area?
No, I think I just, no, not really. I mean, I think I just, learned from records as much as I could, that, trying to think. Yeah, really like those Albert Lee, like there's some couple class, like the Albert Lee on the Dave Edmunds record,
Right.
That one, Sweet.
Yeah, with all the B-bender stuff on it.
But I didn't have a B-bender, so I tried, learn some of that. And then the Ray Flack, that stuff on Highways and Heartaches, was it the Ricky Skaggs record?
Yeah.
And Bruce Boughton, the steel player too. All that stuff we tried to learn, my friends. And yeah, just I guess off the records, and then of course listening to Roy Nichols and all the stuff I had already had, and Don Rich and all that.
Yeah. So you had to have gotten a Tele at some point in this.
Yeah, later. It's funny. I had a Strat all through that.
Okay.
When I was playing this country band I had called the Trailers. I had a mid '70s Strat, like a hardtail Strat, and that's what I played. And then even I got my cooler Strat, my '63 Strat, shortly after then, and that's what I played on on Nobody's Home. That's all Strat.
Yeah.
And I got a Tele by the time we made Country Soul Guitar, I had a Tele.
Yeah.
So that was my first, probably early '90s.
So how did you get a record deal in the first place?
Oh, I had a record deal. It's pretty awesome. Yeah. It's amazing. When you mentioned the movies I played on, a lot of the John Sayles movies.
Right.
The Herring was the guy who was the composer who did a bunch of movies. I met him. He's local here around Boston, and got to working with him on soundtrack stuff. And he had started a small label to put his soundtracks out, and he had a deal for the label with Rounder Records.
Right. So they did distribution for it.
Yeah. So he said, why don't we do, let's do a record, I'll put it out. It was so cool. And he did those 3 records for me, Nobody's Home, Country Soul Guitar, and Lava.
Yeah.
Kind of the extra added bonus that Rounder actually, they had a bunch of smaller labels that they distributed, but they actually did some promotion on it and got it out there. People like you in other parts of the world kind of found it, which was really cool. Because I didn't tour behind it. I was just always here. So it got out into the world a little bit.
Yeah, I remember randomly finding it in a Nashville, record shop, and it was like in the, just the cover alone and the name Country Soul Guitar kind of, pulled me in, and so I picked it up from there. So, yeah. So you were also playing with Jonatha Brooke and The Story. That was kind of a Boston area, kind of duo, then they parted ways and such. And how, I guess those were just people that you were running with at that point.
Yeah, I think I got involved with those guys through a guy named Ben Whitman, who's a great drummer and producer.
Yes.
We went to school together at the conservatory, and he got me involved with those guys and played on those two Story records. And then Jonatha went off on her own, and I played on her first couple solo records, one which was called Jonatha Brooke and the Story, and then one was called 10 Cent Wings.
Mm-hmm.
And played with Jennifer Kimball, who was the other half of that duo. Now
Right.
she's still, and we've made some records together.
Yeah.
And she's still writing really unique stuff. And yeah, so that's kind of, I guess, how that there's a couple of relationships musically that started by meeting people at the conservatory. Some that I still get to play with.
Yeah. And just so people, so for some people that haven't heard like the story and such, so these are some divergent, kind of musical styles that you're playing. You're playing this honky tonk music, you're playing jazz, and then you're playing, this kind of folk pop, for lack of a better term, singer songwriter folk pop music, and that's all very stylistically different and pulling different things from you guitar wise. So where were you pulling like the what you did on those like the Jonatha Brooke and the Story records? Like where did that playing come from? I mean, was that just kind of what the song called for, or where were you learning that type of playing from?
Yeah, Jonatha's tunes were pretty advanced harmonically, a lot of them, and it was just kind of like anything, like anytime you do something like that, trying to find something that fits in the tune. Also, on especially on the first couple records, Ben and Alain Mallet, amazing piano player, who was the co-producer on those and Jonatha's first couple, they came up with some of the actual guitar parts. Okay. They had, and they were like, and if you talk to them now, they were first-time producers, and they were cool with stuff they came up with. They really wanted to they were very hands-on, and I came up with some stuff as well, but it was interesting, very to navigate some of that stuff. You just kind of find what you can, and it was definitely collaborative.
Yeah, it's go ahead.
Oh, sorry. That was kind of the start. There were a bunch of people, especially around Boston and Cambridge, a lot of singer-songwriters. People were, I think, somebody moving here because there was a scene.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of that around, but I would say Jonatha and Jennifer's music was definitely unique, especially harmonically. Some dense chords, and sometimes there weren't many other notes to play, and some of the stuff that Jonatha was doing, there was some dissonance or the voicings were so thick, you could maybe just pick one note to kind of weave in and out of it.
Do a volume swell or something.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So there's footage of you playing with Jonatha here in Nashville at a place called Cafe Milano. That was a joint that used to be here, and so it's Jonatha. There's a background vocalist. Then there's a guy that's playing drums and bass at the same time, and you're playing you're playing your Strat.
Yeah, I remember that. Wow, that was a while ago.
Yeah. So somebody fished that out of the ether and posted it on YouTube, and it was interesting seeing you that far back playing with Jonatha, so in that kind of format. So
cool. Well, she's great. Yeah. Oh no.
So kind of the next thing that kind of comes along is you start playing with Mary Chapin Carpenter. So with that, what I had heard was that Stuart Smith played on the Stones and the Road record, and they felt like they needed to fill out the band with a second guitar player. Is that kind of the truth? Yeah.
I think that's what happened. I think Stuart couldn't do it. I think they asked him to go out on the road with him, and he wasn't available. So they were looking for somebody else. And it's funny, actually, the way that happened was she had two managers at the time, and they had come to see the Story at a gig with the full band up in here in Boston. And I don't remember meeting them at the gig, but I got a call from them like shortly after that, out of because they had seen me play with the story,
Yeah.
and I would be interested in doing this gig, and of course I was.
Yeah. So there wasn't
And
an audition. They just asked you to do it.
she was like at the height of her career, for sure, right at that point. And I don't think I think I met her. I went to a gig that she did shortly after that and met her, and that was cool. But it was one of those, no audition or anything. I just got to do the gig, and I think with the agreement that if it doesn't work out,
Right. Yeah.
that'll be that. But it was really nice that they kind of had faith in me like that.
So what was your rig at this point? Because you're about to go on a big tour. I mean, from the footage, it looked like you were using that '63 Strat, and looks like you had like a Tele that was stripped.
Yeah.
And like some kind of Tell us, what was your rig at that point, playing with Mary Chapin?
EBS special. That's probably what you saw.
Yeah.
Like, and that's on YouTube. So it was, So yeah, I had my Strat, that Tele, and it was my '63 Tele that I still have. It's finished now. Well, I can show it to you. And I had those were kind of the two guitars I was using. I think I had a slide guitar of some kind, maybe a Strat. And I think I had my Super Reverb out. When I first went out with her, I had a Super Reverb and an AC30, and I did bring my AC30 out. I don't think I used it on the gig, but I had it out, and I remember at one point it got trashed just because they do. It's an old one, so like the shelf or whatever, just by being in nothing, it was okay, but I think I just had it out on the road just as like a spare or something. I don't know, but I think I remember. Yeah, I think I was using my Super Reverb for that, and I think they covered it in some stage set, like something. Like it's kind of. I knew it was the big time because there were stairs on stage.
Yes.
It's like, man, there are different people down. Sorry about that. Yeah, so that was pretty much it. Yeah, those guitars. I was playing my Strat a lot back then too.
Yeah, and I'll you looked like you had one of those old Boss pedal trays or something like that. We kind of talked about that on Facebook, but yeah, what'd you have in the board?
I would have had a compressor still. I know I had a Boss compressor, tube screamer, like of the day. This would have been 95, and then hold over for me probably from the years before. Tube screamer, Boss delay, whatever the delay was at the time. Yeah. And maybe usually I'd have probably another overdrive that was, gainier than a tube screamer. I don't remember what that might have been. As we go through so many over the years, a volume pedal, basic stuff, a tremolo, probably. And I used those Boss pedals for a long time. I think, remember exactly. It was probably some years after that I kind of switched over to other stuff.
Yeah, and of course, this was your first. Even though like the story was a signed act, of course you were playing with Mary Chapin, and she was doing a lot of television, and she was doing the Tonight Show, and you're playing bigger venues, and was that a big shift for you to be playing at that level?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I'd never done anything like that. I mean, nothing close. And I always told people my first gig, my first actual time I played on stage with Mary Chapin was at the Grammys that year. Yeah, so I had gone from just, playing around town and doing, regional gigs. And, I'd been overseas and done like some of the blues jazz festival circuit. So, I've been on some bigger stages and stuff. But yeah, the Grammys, we rehearsed for 2 weeks for the tour. It was her first big headlining tour, really. Even though she had had a bunch of hits right before it. I think she was out with Vince maybe the year before when she had all like string of all those giant hits, and then that was her first big headlining tour. So they had pre-production, everything, for a couple weeks. And the first gig was playing the tune on the Grammys. No, that was, that was something else. And yeah, then that year we did Letterman and all the kind of usual TV shows, which again I had never done.
Yeah. Was it a big learning curve to all of a sudden, be performing on TV and all those other things? What were some hard knocks or things that, kind of you got, kicks to the head or something like that with some of these things?
Every day. I think I try to ignore it as much as possible. I mean, maybe that's what most people do is if you're on TV, when I think about it, or when I probably thought about it then, it's like, all right, not only are we recording, but we're filming. Like if one was bad enough to fray your nerves. So I think I just try to kind of ignore the fact that you're doing it, and just fortunately she had a great band and people were really confident and great, and that helped me a lot. Yeah, I can't say I had any. I don't know if there were any horrible things that happened, but I think there was one Letterman we did where there was they had to retake the tune maybe because there was some really bad hum coming from my amp.
Yeah.
Once where he had to re-announce it, but my amp, it's quite possible it was a rental, if we flew in to do it or something.
Right.
Yeah, that's a trip. I don't know if I'd ever get used to it. I've done them since, in the last 5-10 years, and I wish I had a little grain of knowledge to impart to anyone else doing it, but I think I remember my legs shaking by the end of the tune at the Grammys. Like that was just so freaky. Not only is it the Grammys, but you see in the first rows, you see like everyone you've ever listened to, that's star after star.
Yeah, there's like Stevie Wonder or
on
and on and on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was amazing. We got to do so many amazing gigs with her. We played the White House a couple of years later, and yeah, just wild.
Yeah. And you continued to put out your solo records. So you put out Lava, I guess, which was kind of while you were still with Mary Chapin, and then I guess she kind of slowed down as far as her touring, and you've continued to record with her quite a bit, but you haven't toured with her in a number of years.
Yeah, no, I decided to take a break from the road stuff, and she still tours a lot, but I had decided not to do so much, and but luckily, still get to record with her. We just made a record this year that just came out.
Yeah. What made you want to get off the road? I mean, it's kind of obvious in some ways, but yeah.
Yeah, it's. I think part of it was, the obvious thing, being away a lot, and part of it was I just wanted to open myself up to some other experiences, because I feel like if you're doing one gig, it's the best thing in the world, and certainly hers was as great a gig as you could ask for. But I felt like you do that one thing, obviously. Yes. And I'm a great one for like recording in a hotel room and being really productive while I'm out on the road. Mostly my goal is to sleep and make sure I get some rest. And so yeah, I think I wanted to open myself up to some other musical experiences. Also, people get in their head that you do that gig, rightfully so. They never assume that you're around to do anything, even around my hometown where I kind of play a lot, or, my hometown now where I play a lot. For years, people were like, "Well, when are you going back out with Mary Chapin?" And I was like, "I don't know, not in 5 years." But people, rightfully so, they kind of have that idea that you're in that band.
Right.
So that was really why I kind of wanted to take a break at that point.
Well, and also you've been a solo artist all this time also. You've
right.
and you've, I think something I kind of alluded to, earlier was the fact that you've been able to be very successful as a sideman with these different artists, but also you've had success as a solo artist doing your solo records and performing on your own, and have to think that that has to be part of, that you've wanted to continue to do your own thing, and also play with other people.
Yeah, no, it's kind of like, it's almost reverse for me, where my main gig is playing with other people, and my own thing, I love doing it, and it's almost like a side project. I've never really toured doing my own music. I've mostly just played locally here, but getting the records out has been amazing, and especially now where people anywhere can hear it, and the YouTube thing has really helped by people be getting to see what whatever my band does wherever they are without touring. So yeah, it's been basically needing to make a living and also loving being a sideman, but that's kind of been that gets like the main emphasis, I guess.
Yeah.
But lucky to be, I like making a record every once in a while. It's been maybe about every 10 years at this point, but
Yeah, I was going to ask you when are you planning to do another solo record?
I don't know. Good question. Maybe the 10-year cycle.
Well, because when did the Fade Out come out?
Yeah, the Fade Out came out in 17, maybe.
Okay.
Yes, 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh, so I guess we've got 7 more years to go.
Yeah, so I gotta get on. Yeah, and then I got sidetracked with this other project I do where we do all 70s music. So that became a focus instead of my own stuff for a little while. But yeah, I'll probably do another one.
Yeah. Just on a side note, you also you played with Roseanne Cash for a little bit, filling in for John Leventhal. So
yeah, I got some gigs like that, and I don't know if you know Kevin Barry.
I know who he is, and I've seen him play. Yes, so he's kind of a partner of yours, and he also plays with Roseanne too.
Yeah, so he and I have been playing together for 25 years or more, and still all the time, and so we're just pretty tight. And he's an amazing musician and player, and he's been playing with Roseanne for the last few years. And I know John too, and when John had to miss a few gigs, Kev's suggested that I fill in, and I got to do that, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I've been a huge fan of John's for a long time, and that was the record, and they were playing her new record from start to finish. It was very cool. Like, the set was the whole record in order. So it was, and whole band, amazing band, and also friends, and just being able, just kind of learning his stuff, of course, was a treat. And
Yeah.
songs were amazing, parts were amazing, what I could play of them, and
Yeah. He is. Did he on those tunes? Did you have to use any of his alternate tunings where he tunes down on some of the strings? And I think he does that more on acoustic. But
yeah, I think so. And I didn't have to do too much of that. I think Kevin may have had to do one or two of those, and he's not used to, but he did it beautifully. But no, I couldn't do what he does, what John does, or what Kevin does, for that matter. So yeah, it was mostly like the electric parts, kind of really cool.
So, who are some of your favorite players to this day? People that influenced you and you still enjoy listening to. Do you still get off on? Yeah.
I would say Ry Cooder.
Yeah.
I still dig Albert Lee and Ray Flack. I love John's playing. I love Kevin's playing. And probably some other ones. That's always the question. There's so many.
Yeah.
But off the top of my head, I'm just trying to what I listen to. I don't listen to a lot of guitar player records that much. Even I still love the era of players from the 70s and 80s, like Pat Metheny and John Scofield and Bill Frisell. I still listen to. For guitar stuff, that's probably the stuff I listen to.
Yeah. It's interesting in most guitar players, when they make a solo record, it kind of, there might be like one or two ballads on there, but most of the time it's kind of a note fest. And one of the things that, drew me to your albums was that while you might have a tune or two where you do, play more notes, you always tend to play melodic, and your albums are very listenable because they sound like, it sounds like soundtrack music,
Cool.
yeah. And so I've always, and that's why, there are so many solo records by guitarists that just end up being, oh, that's impressive. And after you've listened to it once, you kind of put it aside. So what kind of drove you to make albums that were more melodic instead of the look at me kind of tendency for guitar players?
Yeah, I just thought there was room for that. In my first couple records, I definitely had some note fests and some hot, for what I could do, hot picking kind of stuff, which I love still. And there was like a combination of things, but I don't know. I always liked exploring the fact, my concept back then was like, okay, I love playing rootsy country guitar, and that's in blues, and that can be the vibe of the stuff, but also there's no reason it can't be simple melodies and stuff that might be sung, but it's just played on guitar, and that was part of what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Glad that came through, and probably now in the last couple records more so. And even the last record I did, the Fade Out, I set out to make more rowdy record, like with more like picking and like just going for it. And we did cut a couple tunes like that, but it was weird, and they came out okay, but it didn't. My own playing like that didn't do that much for me. So I kind of went back to the stuff that I'll always gravitate to what I want to hear, I guess.
Yeah. Well, of course, right now, we're still in this strange place of, COVID and quarantine, and, hopefully we'll, maybe be doing gigs next year, or, when do you have any plans for gigging at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. My main gig these days is with Peter Wolf.
Yeah.
We had some shows for the fall, and they've been rescheduled to like April, I guess, March and April. So we're hoping that those will take, and things will be cool by then. I'm kind of hunkered down here. There's, a couple opportunities, probably same everywhere. Like some venues are doing live streaming with no audience.
Right.
There's tour gigs around here when the weather's nice in somebody's yard or something. I haven't done any of that stuff. But yeah, hopefully by the spring.
Yeah.
I'll be back to it. I've been spending my time. I think I mentioned I'm going to trying to put a Patreon page together. So I've kind of been focused. Feels like I have a project to do, and I've been recording some stuff and videoing some stuff. So at least I'm doing something.
Well, that's very cool. I really hope that I can't wait to see that. So you'll have a supporter in me. So absolutely, and
awesome.
Excited to see that. So let's go down the gear trail. So tell us about the Tele that you're holding right there.
All right. So this is, I'm little, but yeah, I think this is my 53.
Yeah.
It's been pretty much my main guitar for a long time. Right now, it's the one that's the least. It's not in great shape. It doesn't play too much in tune. It needs frets. Setup's a little funky, but it's a great guitar.
So, if if you're going to get that guitar refretted, like what kind of frets do you like? Do you like the vintage ones, or do you like the bigger frets?
I think they're kind of in between. In fact, I was just talking to my friend Wolf Janandes, who's going to do it. Yeah, not super little, like not maybe the truest vintage, but a little bigger. I forget, 61 somethings.
Yeah, there's like 6105 is kind of a popular tall,
like a medium, not too tall, not too fat, but kind of a little bigger than vintage.
Yeah.
And I think on a bunch of these. Yeah, and this one this is a 53 I got for my brother. probably maybe 20 years ago, and I had my I had my 63 at the time. That's the one I got in the 90s, and I had never played, one of these, as a lot of people haven't,
Yeah.
and I liked my Tele, and it was pretty cool, fat sounding rosewood Tele. And he had this. He said you should play this outside his shop. He had just gotten it, and when you could almost not play it. The frets were so almost like below the fingerboard. They were so gone, and they were probably refret anyway. So, but I could play it. I hit a chord. I couldn't believe what it sounded like. The black thing. It's just, well, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I said, okay, what do I have to do? And I traded. I think I still had. What did I? Yeah, at the time I had a 56 Tele. It was an Esquire. It was a nice guitar, but it was kind of unstable. And I had that, and I think I traded him that and one other pretty good guitar. And he had gotten a decent deal on it because it had like a route that was refilled
Yeah.
for the neck pickup. And like some of it was oversprayed, the neck was oversprayed, and maybe the body too. I think I only remember now, since it's wearing away, that there's a little, right?
Yeah.
Right. There's a little patch, I think, there, that little spot. Nothing like major. Maybe the pickguard's not original. I don't even know. But all the important stuff, the bridge pickup is original. The neck pickup was rewound, and I had to have it rewound again, but it sounds really good. Yeah, so that's the story of this thing. It's pretty cool.
And that's been your main Tele for a long time. Yeah. Except for before that was the 63. Yeah.
Yeah. So you want to see that one? This is that one you talked about that had no finish on it.
Yeah.
That looks like this now. I had it refinished.
Oh, nice.
10, 15 years ago. Yeah, it's a cool guitar. It's
So this is the guitar on Country Soul Guitar and some of those other albums. Yeah.
Yeah. When I got it, you'll laugh. It's like I think the only thing that was original was the neck and the body. It was like $1,000 at one of our local stores, Cambridge Music, and it had like a 6-piece bridge on it.
Yeah.
6 bridge even, that I didn't even change, I think, till I got it refinished. It was like, had it that way for a long time, and it had like, I don't even know what the pickups were, like Mighty Might or something like.
Okay.
Before, like in the early 90s, there weren't that many. I don't know. There was Duncan and a couple other things. And since it had a black pickguard that wasn't original either. So, now looks a little cooler. I replaced the pickups. It's got a real, Tele Brit saddles on it. And I love it. It's one of my favorites.
What kind of pickups have you put in it?
These are Antiquities.
Okay.
Yeah, I really like them. And then this is the one. I don't mess with pickups that much in my guitars. I don't really want to. If it sounds good, I kind of leave it. But
yeah,
one guitar I've tried a bunch of different pickups in. Just because it never had the originals, and these are the ones I like the best so far.
Is that a flat pole or a staggered pole bridge pickup?
Oh yeah, this is like, good question. I think it is their like kind of flat pole with the raised D. Do they make something like that?
Yeah, that's a staggered, like a later 50s style or 60s. Yeah.
Yeah, although they might have made one that's supposed to be like a flat pole with the pole raised. I can't really remember.
Okay. Yeah.
Which might have, I don't know. On the other hand, I might have just wanted to put in whatever the 60s pickups would have been.
Yeah.
And it's a stock set of their one.
And I'm guessing you've had to refret it a couple times through the years because you've played it so much.
I think I only refretted it when I got it, and it had pretty big frets on it because I didn't know any better then. That was 92 or whatever. And I think I just refretted it again probably a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, with a little smaller, more normal frets. It's really nice. Well, I didn't do it. My friend Jim Moradian did it. So
yeah. And While we're at it, what kind of strings and picks do you use?
Um, the Dario strings,
Yeah.
tens pretty much on every. Although I for a while I had nines on my 53 just to try it. And I kind of liked it. I just put tens back on, but they were kind of cool. So the Dario, and then I like these Fender heavy picks now. I don't know, just the standard size. I was using those Dunlop Tortex ones for a long time, various thicknesses. But yeah, this has kind of been what I like for acoustic. I do have a couple blue chip picks that I like for that. I think they're pretty cool.
Yeah, they're very nice. Do you use the point or the rounded part of the pick?
Yeah, I use the point.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. That's very very cool guitar.
Yeah, it's a good one. And then there's, I don't know if you want to see all these, but
yeah, get another Tele.
This is a Relic that I actually is almost use as much, or if not more, lately than my 53. It's called a 53 Relic.
Yep.
And I wanted like a road guitar at one point. Something that felt like my guitar. And they had, I got this from Willie's.
Yeah.
And Nate, and I asked him. I said, "Is it really like a 53?" He's like, "Yeah, it really is." And it feels almost just like my real one, my old one, and it's really enjoyable. It's got, I think, a little bit of a flatter fingerboard, not like that nothing extreme, but in a way, it's just.
How did your string bending technique? It's very yeah. You have a very smooth kind of, It sounds like you heard B bender stuff and then learned and then were kind of mimicking it, because it's your bending's very smooth. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. I mean, a lot of it's like I listen to pedal steel players,
Yeah.
and the B bender. I mean, I love Clarence White. I know there are a lot of other B bender players. I know Marty plays that guitar amazingly. Yeah. But yeah, I never had one, so some of it's the B bender thing, and a lot of it's just trying to play what the steel players would have played.
Yeah. Humor me and the tune Bud's Bounce.
Oh yeah.
Did you play that with hammer-ons or bends when you recorded that?
Well, yeah, that's a lot of the hammer-on thing is something I've been into again, just for I think it's sometimes overlooked for the steel. Like a lot of the steel players I love, didn't always sound like a bend, even though they would bend the string, but it sounded more like that,
Yeah. Right.
It's easy bending too. So. But yeah, Bud's Bounce was.
Yeah.
Hammer-ons or bends, and that's.
Yeah, there's so much to pedal steel, like sounding like a pedal steel. It's actually more about having legato, lines and also having the vibrato in it afterwards. It's kind of like there's the bend, and then there's like where they would use the bar to shake the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of it, which I do unconsciously now, is the right hand thing, because like the damping that steel players have to do, it's like that to me is such a cool sound, and it's not always appropriate, but just that. Stopping the notes so they don't all.
Yeah, you're stopping the notes so that they all have their impact. Yeah.
Yeah, and like that the steel players out of necessity had to do, because all the strings that are around. They have 10, and just that they always, and slide players too. Of course, that's a thing that just to keep the other stuff from ringing. But sometimes it's just a cool sound to me in itself. Just that short.
So that's that's the 53 Relic. And what is the neck shape on that? Is it more rounder or like a V or what?
No, it's round. Like I said, it's really close to the way my 53 feels. It's pretty round. Some might call it a slight V. That might be. It's not as like with those no-casters they made for a long time, the Relics that had really big necks.
Yeah, those were crazy. Those were way too big.
Yeah, those were all too big. I always wanted to find one that was, like mine, and that's what this is. It's not quite as big, but it's still pretty round.
Yeah.
Definitely not like my 63 is more typical. Same as the Strat and the Tele are almost the same. They're a little, shallower.
Yeah.
But it's still nice.
Yes, 63 can be some cool necks because they kind of started getting bigger than the 59 and 60 because they got really small then. 63, 64 are some good feeling necks. So
yeah, they kind of came back to like the Gibsons and the Fenders in the early 60s. They were like flat.
Yeah, they were flat and small, and it was I don't know who thought that was cool, but it was like starting in the late 50s. Fender especially, and then Gibson started a year or two later, like the 60, 61, 62. Those are some of the skinniest, flattest necks on both Fenders and Gibsons, and then they both decided at the same time to make their necks a little bigger. So it's very strange.
If it's a great guitar, it's like I'll just go. I have a really pretty awesome Casino, a 62, that has that kind of neck. It's like, but I almost don't even think about it because the guitar sounds so amazing, and I don't know. I just go with it.
Yeah.
Worth it.
Yeah. Let's see the old Strat. I'm assuming that's all the Teles?
Yeah, those are the 3 Teles. There's a couple more I've had over the years that I don't have. I had a really cool, really early, like maybe 52 or 3, really weird one that's two-tone sunburst that I think one of the owners thought was a refin, but it really looks original. And I had that when we made Lava.
Okay.
I played that beautiful sounding guitar. My friend Chris Rival, who engineered and recorded all my records, he has that guitar now. And he plays a lot. It's very cool. It's very dark. It's got a really narrow neck on it. Like, I don't think I've ever played a Tele with the width was that narrow. Maybe an A neck? Is that what?
That's possible, yeah.
It's really our little Tele, but it sounds great. But this one, yes, this is.
Dang.
Yeah, it's pretty. And this actually, I've been experimenting. This has 9s on it now as well, which I really like on this guitar. So yeah, I got this. This is pretty much all original, I think. We've been refretted. Maybe, yeah, I think it's all there. I got this from my brother. This was like my first great vintage guitar. Probably in the late 80s I got it.
Yeah.
So I had this mid 70s like blonde hardtail Strat. That was my guitar. So I traded in that, and I think I had it for all of 6 months. I had a white Charvel Jackson with a or whatever it had on it with the shark tooth inlay, and it's like, I don't know what I was thinking. This was the 80s though, so
yeah.
I traded those 2 guitars for this.
Okay, show it. The wear on that thing is amazing. Show us the front and back of that.
Yeah, so I think you can see that, and then yeah, it was pretty beat when I got it. Like, it had a lot of this wear.
Yeah,
but like stuff right here, I probably wore off because the finish is so thin. I think that was the thing, and why maybe partly there's still a little whiff of like someone's initials. I don't know if you can see in the top of that wear that now are.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like someone tried to put an L or something there. Who knows?
I think it was M. It was
okay.
But yeah, it's pretty awesome. So yeah, I traded him 2 guitars. I think he had it on his list for $1,800 around that time, and I think he gave it to me, for less. I don't remember exactly what it was, but yeah.
Your brother gave you a deal.
Uh,
Your brother gave you a deal. That's
yeah,
good.
well, he always does, but yeah, I've actually recently looked at some stock lists of his from the '80s, and like all the Blackguards are like $1,200 and whatever it was from the '50s. The Strats would have been more, than the Teles then.
Yeah, because it was the '80s and it was Strat crazy. I remember, in the '80s, Blackguards, would be in that $1,000 to $1,500 range unless they were just crazy clean.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So that was your first good, vintage guitar. And did you ever, did you have trouble, with the, because during the time period, you also had Strats that had like EMGs in them and stuff like that. Was that for the times when you had noise issues with that one? Did you have much noise issues with that guitar on stage?
I don't think for the gigs I was doing, I don't really remember it being a problem too much, or I just, it was just a necessary evil. But I do now remember that I had, maybe it was around the same time, I did have one of those, remember the Strat Plus, was it, with the lace sensors?
Yeah.
Something like that. I know I had one of those guitars that had quiet pickups. I don't know if I used it I know I used it a little bit. I might have taken it on the road. But I have pictures from like European festivals back then. I played some of the blues, played with Otis Rush a couple times. At circuit. But I was playing this guitar, so I obviously wasn't that afraid of taking it out with me.
Yeah.
Now I'm a little more wary of checking a guitar. There was one trip with Mary Chapin where I had this out, and I think I had a gig bag that fit in a road case, so I could do either. And I went to bring it on the plane. We were coming back from Ireland, and they wouldn't let me take it on the plane. I had to put it. Luckily, I had the road case to put it in, but I didn't get it back for like 2 days, and I freaked out because it didn't show up, and it didn't show up another day. And yeah, so I think after that I was a little spooked about taking these out.
Yeah. So amps. What are I know you've obviously got a ton of amps, but what are some of your your main amps? I've seen you play through Voxes and Fenders and all sorts of things. So
for a long time I really have a couple AC30s I love, and for years that was kind of my main thing. I have a couple early 60s AC30s, one couple with original speakers that I really love, and I used those for a while, and then for gigs, and then I started using I had an AC30 cabinet, and I had this blockhead head that I really liked through that. It was a copy of an early JTM 45.
Yeah.
So for Marshall kind of world, and I still have that. It's a really cool sounding thing. I use that a lot. I like the 212 thing, but all that to say, before all that, I have my Vibrolux reverb that I still have, and what I used on most of the records. And after all the 212 thing, it's funny, the last year or so I got back into using my Vibrolux reverb again on a lot of gigs, and that's kind of a default for me, and now like here in this room, and mostly at home, I have a really nice Princeton reverb, which is, just like a version of that kind of thing, another black panel.
Do you have a 10 in it, or have you put a 12 in there?
It's a 10.
Yeah.
But I did put one of those Eminence hemp speakers in it.
Yeah.
They make a 10 now, and I really like it in that amp. It's a little dark, but it's not overly so, and it's just kind of fat and full sounding. I have those in my Vibrolux too.
Yeah.
Pretty sure. And so yeah, now lately, just playing here at home, I've got some really cool smaller amps. I got the Princeton reverb. I have a really nice Tweed Deluxe and the Harvard, and it's got this Ampeg back. I posted that video the other day.
Yeah.
So that's been kind of my default just around the house. But yeah, the Vox, the AC30 thing I still love. And I have a cool I don't use it on gigs too much. I have a cool master volume mark, like a 50 watt, like, that, whatever that was in the late 70s, early 80s. That's really one of my favorites. Like for that sound, it's, I don't know, I lucked out for whatever reason. It just sounds perfect. I always think it's foolproof, no matter what session I've been at with that, no matter what the engineer knows or doesn't know, it seems to always sound good. So, yeah, and I've kind of found this thing lately where I put another replacement speaker, same speaker, one of those hemp speakers in the Tweed Deluxe. It's a 50s Tweed Deluxe, and I kind of like it in that. But also, I've used that to plug different heads into, like on sessions. I'll just put that out in the room, and the Marshall actually weirdly sounds really good through it.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Through a 112 hemp speaker.
Yeah, it's kind of strange, but it seems. And even I plugged the AC30 through it. I have an 8-ohm output on one of my 830s, and yeah, it's weird. In that little cabinet, it seems to just, at least mic'd up, it has that nice focus and seems to work. Kind of studio-wise, that has kind of lately been my rig. Bring that, which is great on its own, and then maybe a couple different heads.
Yeah. Effects-wise, what have you been using?
Really, I have a basic thing, a couple overdrives, maybe one or two delays, tremolo. They're all pretty, at least for like day to day and for most gigs. So I really like a couple Mad Professor things.
Yeah.
And I think I'm an official endorser, but I use a Sweet Honey overdrive. That's really, like, I've used that for a long time now. It's pretty much one of my go-tos. And the Deep Blue delay.
Mm-hmm.
Their delay, which I really like a lot. Then, and their trum pedal. And then lately, I've been turned on to the Jam pedals.
Okay.
You know about them?
I don't.
Really cool company from Greece. And I am also now affiliated with the Jam Pedals company. But both of these companies, I don't really have that many endorsements, but the ones I do, I can safely say I liked and were just using their stuff before I became, any kind of official capacity. So the Jam stuff, I've been using the thing that's called a Rattler pedal, which is an overdrive that, I got turned on to these. There's a local shop here in the Boston area called the Music Emporium. Always a great acoustic shop for years and years, and now they do a lot of electric stuff too. And I've done a couple demos for them for guitars, and one I was over there doing one. They said, "I'll just plug into this pedal board. There's a delay and an overdrive." And I turned on this overdrive, and it was like instant fun, like a 3-knob overdrive. And I was like, how many? The camera can't pan to the pedal graveyard I have here. I've played through tons of stuff, but if I had known what it was supposed to be, I might not have ever plugged into it. But it's basically like a gainier overdrive for what I want. I like the Sweet Honey is more in the, I guess, tube screamer zone. Overdrive. You can get it pretty rocking, but and I usually like to have something that's a little gainier than that. And so this thing called the Rattler is I guess it's their take on a Rat pedal.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, and I had a Rat pedal. I used a Rat pedal in the 80s, and the funny thing is, like, I don't think it really sounds like a Rat pedal. In a great way. It's in the best way. It doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean,
they failed in the best way.
Yeah, in the best. But man, it's really been a pedal I love playing through for that, like, gainier, but still it has it's not too thick sounding. Like, it has character. It feels like an amp. All the stuff that I kind of want. Feels like an amp. It sounds really convincing to me. So I really dig that. And I'm using this thing called the Waterfall, which is their Vibe chorus pedal, which I really like, especially like the vibrato. It's an analog thing. And then they make a cool delay called the Delay Llama.
Okay.
It's analog, but it's cool. It's a long time. They have a long delay time for an analog thing without sacrifice. Like, sometimes it seems like when somebody makes something like that the long out of an analog delay with a longer delay sound a little compromised or a little
Yeah.
crappier.
Yeah, sometimes they have too many artifacts going on. There's just too much other like junk going on.
Something happens, but with
Yeah.
this one, they figured something out where the long delays sound so beautiful, and I don't think I've ever had another pedal do that. So I use that a bunch too. That's pretty cool. And their trem pedal is also really nice.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it. That's why I'm looking down. I'm looking at, and then I'll just kind of add stuff as I need. I've kind of gotten into fade. I have an old small stone phase shifter I really like. That's kind of beautiful sounding, and I have a little. They had, it's from the '70s, so it's gets a little volume drop, and I have this. It's an Analog Man Boss EQ that I use with the phase shifter just to make it sound a little bigger and just kind of do that. And then I have a couple of, the usual, like I'll add stuff as I need, a couple fuzz pedals but really the basic thing is a couple overdrives, couple delays, and some tremolo.
Yeah. Do you find yourself not using compression as much anymore?
Yeah, it's because we were talking about the Boss pedal thing.
Yeah.
I stopped using the compressor maybe in the 90s, and I don't think I ever looked back. For some reason, I do have a couple now that I like. There's an Analog Man that compressor that I think is cool, and I have an old Dynacomp, and every once in a while I'll plug them in just because it's fun. But yeah, for some reason I used a lot, like back in the day. I can hear it on my records, and it's cool. It's a cool sound. And I also still use it a lot for like volume pedal stuff, because just like for that boost, that it could have out of it. And at a certain point, I kind of found that just like a light overdrive took the place of that function for me, especially with like the volume pedal stuff, which I would do a lot of. It's like, well, it doesn't come across as being that dirty, and it gives me the boost that I kind of want. And the compressor thing, I just kind of got away from it.
Yeah. So is that what the Honey overdrive kind of functions for you now in that way?
Like that or the Keeley made a blues driver.
Yeah.
Mod. I still have one of those that I like. Those are pretty cool. That kind of thing. That's like a milder overdrive. As well as filling for other stuff. But yeah, I felt like that I didn't need it to be like clean to have like a little boost and a little fun.
Right.
And I think that's what the compressor kind of does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's its own thing anyways, but.
Yeah. Well, Duke, this has been very, very cool and fun to sit down with you, and I appreciate you doing it. It's a real treat, so I'm glad we were finally able to do this.
Oh, it's great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Yeah, it will be, and I just we'll be watching for when your kind of Patreon thing comes up. Please keep us informed on that so that we can kind of spread the word on that.
Oh,
and
thanks. Well,
yeah, and just very grateful. Thank you, Duke.
Me too, man. Thanks, Zach.